Hey, how's it going, captains? Admiral Hattori here, and welcome aboard for another World of Warships video on my channel. In today's video, I will be taking a look at the Italian heavy cruiser line, because recently I acquired my tier 10 Venezia. This is one beautiful ass ship. It's so beautiful to the point that I actually purchased the permanent camouflage. The light turquoise bluish camouflage with a very clean paint all over the ship. But right now I'm showcasing the tier 9 Italian heavy cruiser, the Brindisi. I already have a Venezia game in the hard drive, but I decided to show this game specifically because this is by far the best game that I had with the Italians. So the Italians has been out for almost a year, and in the beginning it was very popular, but then it just suddenly died out. And there's a good reason why. It's primarily the changes to SAP. But before I can talk about the SAP rounds, I just want to talk about the overall grind. So I did the Italian events a year back, and I automatically got the tier 5 Italian cruiser. I don't know the name of it. It starts with an M. And in the mid tiers, I can safely say that I hated it. I absolutely hate so much of everything about these ships. I just couldn't get them to work. It's infuriating to play. If you're used to just getting deleted or just not doing well, then I guess it's fine, but that's how I feel about the tier 5 and the tier 6. It got to the point where I just free XP to the tier 6 and try it out. Couldn't handle the stock. I thought it would be a different experience. Upgraded with the free XP for the overall hull and the increased range, whatever the case is. Still did not change my opinion about it, and I got so sick of tier 6 because I just keep getting deleted, or whenever I get into range where I want to do some favorable damage, people just start focusing me because people know that the Trento or the tier 5, they're very flimsy. So the Italian cruisers, the armor is very light. It's a really weird armor scheme because once you hit tier 9 and tier 10, the armor it's a lot better. It is a bigger improvement. It feels actually like a heavy cruiser, but it is in some way very flimsy. So the mid tiers, I just free XP the Zera, and I just want to start at tier 8, the Amalfi. Amalfi, it's a decent ship, but I was averaging around 40 to 50,000 damage, or even 30,000. So the damage output is extremely low compared to the other tier 8 cruisers that I've played. Other tier 8s I can average around 70,000. I get good games around 100,000. For the tier 8, my good games are like 80,000, 90,000. And part of the reasoning here to why the damage is lower than usual might be because, or primarily because, the SAP. So the SAP, the way it works is that before the nerf, as I was talking about earlier, how they just suddenly just drop off from popularity, they could penetrate any piece of armor on a ship at any angle. No ricochet. No such thing as ricochets. It's just full penetration. Or they will shatter if the armor is thick enough. And in the case of the 203 millimeter guns on the Venezia, the Brindisi, and the Amalfi, it's around 54 millimeters, if I remember correctly. And the problem appears in clan battle. In clan battle, you would have a full team of Venezias, and as a result, all the Venezias, what they do is they just focus one target. No matter how hard you angle, you're just gonna take a lot of damage because, again, the SAP didn't care about angles. So Wargaming nerfed the SAP where it actually ricochet at a certain angle. So it doesn't ricochet like AP. It's better. It's kind of in between AP and the Royal Navy Light Cruiser AP, because the Royal Navy Light Cruiser AP, they get a very special penetration angle, which is much more lenient than your regular AP. So to me, SAP is basically the Royal Navy light cruisers as if they never were light cruisers. They had bigger guns. That's how the Italian cruisers play. They're lightly armored And the way the ship moves, they're very fast ships, no doubt. Not Royal Navy, the Italian cruisers, we're talking about like high tiers, average speed, 37 knots, 38, and maybe near 40s. It's a very fast cruiser. So they play like French. They have light cruiser playstyle like the Royal Navy light cruisers, right? And they got the special SAP shell type. So SAP is very finicky for me. You can get massive amount of damage, at the same time you can get low damage output. It's inconsistent, but you can definitely make them work, and they can perform like a beast at times in certain games. The only issue is that it requires a lot of knowledge of what you're shooting at, like no joke. So the way it works, if the armor is thin enough and you have the right angle, of course you're gonna penetrate. But just because you're able to penetrate the armor does not guarantee damage, because there are two situations where the SAP just not going to favor you. First one's obvious, is that a certain part of the ship has been over damaged to a point where it's saturated. You're just not gonna do any damage at all because it's destroyed. If this makes sense, if a tank is destroyed, you can't do any more damage. Translate that to a certain part of the ship. If the bow is been damaged by everybody or by you, you're gonna do less damage to that portion of the ship because it's saturated. So you have to find something else to hit, which in the case of that ship, it would be the stern or the superstructure or the belt armor or somewhere else other than the bow. Second case is the downfall of SAP, because it's not AP since it's semi-AP, hence SAP. So if a ship has a special armor scheme, I wouldn't say special, because there are a number of ships out there that have this type of armor scheme where it's multi-layer. So the outermost layer of the ship is thin enough for the SAP to penetrate. It will penetrate. Once the SAP penetrate that piece of armor, it will automatically explode inside the ship. But if the armor inside the ship, the second layer or whatever other layer inside the ship is thick enough, it can completely mitigate your rounds. There'll be no damage. So it basically shatters inside the ship. Hence, semi-AP, whereas AP will actually go through that next layer and actually do damage. So that's a lot. That is quite a bit, because first, okay, what am I facing? Am I facing Kremlin? No chance, because Kremlins, they have armor all over the ship. It's very difficult to hit the bow or stern of the Kremlin at range. The deck armor is going to just bounce or shatter the shell, and the only realistic place to hit is the superstructure, but at best, you can bring down the superstructure or the overall ship to like half HP, because by the time you farm off the superstructure of the Kremlin, it's basically saturated and you'll be doing that much damage against the Kremlin. You're going to be doing like 1k salvos for like 10 hits on the superstructure at that point. So then you have to get closer and start hitting the upper belt, which is the next choice, or try to hit the bow, which is difficult because again, it's a small portion of the ship that is not as big as the target as the mid section of the ship. German battleships are difficult. SAP chews up absolutely American battleships, the standard types and the all or nothing armor scheme, because the all or nothing is thinly armor on the outside because it's not important in the sense of the design of the ship, whereas the citadel and all the important stuff of the ship, like the kitchen, in my opinion, will be heavily armored. So SAP is extremely effective against those American battleships, especially against Colorado, because you just pen the crap out of them. Iowas, full HP Iowas, if you get a decent salvo on it with the Brindisi or the ML5, you can get 10k salvos on the opening hit on the Iowa. Of course, eventually we'll just downgrade because it's saturated. But yeah, American battleships are easily one of the greatest targets you can hit. SAP is the best shell type for dealing against destroyers, because in theory, these shells basically make destroyers have citadels. I have deleted destroyers when they show broadside against my SAP shells. So SAP extremely effective against USN cruisers, against destroyers absolutely destructive. And of course, my favorite feature of the SAP is that they chew up armor on cruisers most cruisers that I face, especially Smolensk, which is an added bonus of playing the Italian cruiser line, because Smolensk, even fairly angle, I still get very decent salvos, like 5Ks per salvo with the Venezia. So that's the selling point of SAP. But if you're up against a lot of armor targets like battleships or ships just stay angle, even destroyers who are angle will just negate your SAP. Yes, destroyers, you can't overmatch the armor unless they show a broadside or some form of angle, because SAP does not balance as easily as AP. Playstyle, you're all about getting the angles, getting the flank like the French battleships, not French battleships, the French cruisers. But at the same time, I don't do that with the Italians, because you might have noticed in the early game, I put myself in a really weird position where I'm fully angled and I'm just moving forward and backwards and just trying to get as much salvos as possible. That is how I play my Italian cruisers, because that's the only way I'm gonna stay within range and trying to get some damage with my guns. At the same time, don't show broadside in Italian cruisers, because they're one of the easiest ship to just devastate strike. And their citadel, the size of the citadel is in a sense like the Royal Navy, except that they took a different approach. So Royal Navy light cruisers or even heavy cruisers, their citadel sits high above the waterline. The Italians, it sits moderately above the waterline, but what makes it so easy to citadel them is because the ships are very long, so their citadels tend to be very long. So there'll be cases where battleships just blow through your bow or stern and get a random citadel, or if you don't angle well enough, they will citadel you. Now the Venezia, which I do have a gameplay that I plan on commentating later, has a great armor scheme that you can't find on the previous Italian cruisers, where the lower belt near the waterline is 40 millimeters all over the ship except the tip of the stern, which means that if you angle properly and the shells happen to hit from any battleship, they're just going to ricochet, which is nice. But anything below the Venezia, which is practically everything else, you're just gonna take a lot of damage. You get decent armor at Amalfi. I don't know about Zera. Brindisi is where it's acceptable for me. Brindisi is the first Italian ship that I consider usable or enjoyable in games, where it's a balance between having a bad game and good games and decent game. The Amalfi, I just can't get the firepower out of that ship, and yeah, it's the first modern feeling cruiser for me. I can't say anything with the Zera again, but it's the first, I guess, decent and workable compared to the Tier 5 and Tier 6, which was a nightmare. I just don't want to talk about it. I just didn't enjoy it. Now, of course, the last thing, or maybe the last two things I want to talk about, is the consumables, more specifically the Italian smoke. So consumables, again, the SAP is extremely effective against destroyers. I'm bringing this up because the Italians, I thought the Japanese cruisers would have the least amount of utility, but I was mistaken, because the Italians are the ones that have the least amount of utility, because they don't have hydroacoustic search, which means that, yeah, you got shells that are extremely effective against destroyers, but you don't have the means of rushing a destroyer without getting torpedoed on the way, or trying to see the destroyer inside their smoke with your hydroacoustic search. Major downside. And one of the commander skills or captain skills I would consider investing is in the radio location to get an idea where the destroyer's at, because another thing about the Italian cruisers that I found compared to cruisers that I played, more specifically, I've been playing the Japanese and the Americans. They have absolutely horrendous concealment. So destroyers, I have no clue who's spotting me. And I had a game where Zao was spotting my Venezia the entire time when I thought it was a destroyer. It turns out to be the Zao. That is how bad the concealment is. It's Hindenburg level. And I can't say anything about the Russians, because I know the Moskva has horrendous concealment. the Petrol. I bet the Nevetsky has good concealment because it's a light cruiser. I haven't played that ship, so I can't say. But yeah, horrible concealment, no hydroacoustic search, but the proper weapon to deal with destroyers. A hurdle that you gotta get over with. Now the smoke is unique. Number one, once you get to the heavy cruisers, which is specifically the 203mm guns on the Amalfi and above, your firing range inside smoke is 10 kilometers. If you fire and someone's within 10 kilometers and below, they're going to spot you. So it negates the purpose of this smoke. This smoke, you can go full speed and you can be concealed as long as you're not radared or you're firing your guns 10 kilometers within the range of another ship. It's a get out of jail card basically when you're caught out in the open, and it's a very nice feature. This basically allows you to get into, get out of sticky situations that you might have overextended it, and you know that you need to turn in order to turn around, which requires you to show broadside. Again, Italian cruisers, they have massive citadels, so yeah, it's a really nice use of a smoke. It has a long cooldown. Unfortunately, I was thinking that they might have 5 of these and short cooldowns, but no, that isn't the case. It's a get out of jail card again, so use it wisely. And the other situation you will ever use this is maybe you're willing to Tenno Henka Banzai, but in an Italian fashion, where you see a battleship in front of you and you're going to try to get your torpedoes out by charging at it. And one of the ways is just use the smoke and don't fire your guns. And of course, someone's hopefully out there spotting for you, because you can use your smoke and charge at it with immunity, assuming that it doesn't run out. It's a short duration. I sometimes use it to sit in the smoke and farm damage, but that is probably the last thing you will ever use your smoke for, because you don't have that many of them like the Royal Navy, and it's short, so it's a very situational tool that is very useful. And I guess that's the price you pay for not having hydroacoustic search. But then again, the Royal Navy light cruiser, they get smoke and they have hydroacoustic search and they have radar if you play the bell fast. But yeah, that's the Italians in a nutshell. And of course they have torpedoes, as you witness, very slow torpedoes, not many of them. And the way people use torpedoes on the Italians are like the Yoshinos, where you just drop them. They have very long range compared to other cruisers, but they're just not as long as like the Yoshino, which uses the Shimakaze torpedoes. So you just drop them when someone approaches you. The hit chance are very low, unless someone just blatantly still broadside, and it takes a while to get to your target. So having only like 3 on the Venezia, which is a downgrade from the Brindisi, the torpedoes have very limited uses, and I just use them whenever I can and nobody's in the line of sight of my torpedoes, hopefully, because one of the problems with people who play Shimikazes and Yoshinos, or even the Italians, is that people just drop them haphazardly. I try to avoid that habit, so I just save them for specific scenarios, or if I'm alone, I'll drop them at like Smolensk or Minotaur sitting in their smoke. I might get a lucky hit, and I assume they have high alpha given that they are slow and there's not many of them, especially on the Venezia, only having 3 per side. But that is the Italian Navy cruiser in a nutshell. SAAP does more damage than HE, but you can't set fire, can't penetrate like AP. AP wise, they do a lot of damage. I wouldn't say a lot of damage, but they pack quite a punch. Especially the shell velocity on Italians are very fast, as you might have noticed. They just fly to your target. But another downside is just that they have a very slow reload, especially on the Venezia, 20.5 seconds. So I'm very hesitant of using AP at times, because I don't get another opportunity. If they angle, I'm way better off using SAP, for sure. I can do as much damage as AP with SAP. As a matter of fact, SAP maximum damage is higher than AP, but technically AP is still better than SAP when it comes to maximum damage, because maximum damage is guaranteed on AP when you get citadels, whereas SAP is calculated based on desaturated portion of the ship that you damage. So if it's undamaged, you will get your maximum damage. You will definitely get your maximum damage, but if it's damaged, you can never get the maximum damage, if that makes sense. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time on World of Warships.